Hey, so what is going on, everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario, and E3 has come, E3 is gone, and it's been another E3 week, and I want to bring you all my thoughts and feelings and overarching themes of what I think of E3 2016. Overall, I have to say, pretty good show. Pretty good show. I thought this year they did pretty well with, most things, and there were quite a few things I was happy to see, and I'm definitely excited about, and I haven't pre-ordered anything yet, and I haven't purchased anything yet, but that's going to be happening at one point, just when I actually feel like it, to be honest. So, normally every year, I do this week of E3 content. It's been kind of a tradition since 2012 or so. I always do my overviews of the big three conferences, and then I might do some other videos here and there, so for anybody who's completely annoyed to hell and back with this E3 content, dude, it's 1 week per year, man. So you're good. You're good. You'll survive if you want to stay on the channel. But what's going on with that is I want to first off talk about, the conferences. Now, I didn't hear very good things, admittedly, about the Ubisoft and the Bethesda conferences, and I didn't watch them, mostly because with those ones, they just didn't interest me too much, and I watched what I needed to from them. I had seen, for example, South Park: The Fractured But Whole. That was my favorite original game, and I think it came out in 2013. Was that it? Man, it's been a few years, but yeah, no, absolutely loved the first game that came out, The Stick of Truth, so definitely looking forward to the new South Park game, and that's going to be coming out later this year, so as I said, I am happy to get my hands on that once it does happen, and it pretty much is what I expected from the game. It's the first one, but different theme and done better. So nothing wrong with that to me. But aside from that, I'm mostly focusing on the conferences, and the conferences I did see were Sony's, Nintendo's, whatever the hell they had. They just should not have done anything for E3, to be honest. That is my opinion, because I felt like the Treehouse thing was just horribly done. Either do a conference or don't do a conference. They can still show up, they can have their demos, they can have their reveals, I don't mind that, but I just don't think it's very viable when they have, no conference, or they have that type of conference, and it just kind of hurts them in a way. That's what it seemed like. For anyone that didn't see the Nintendo Treehouse type stream, they were trying to... I don't know, they've had other years where, they have their Nintendo Direct. I just remember the name now. And Nintendo Direct, I always thought it was kind of weird, but the thing is, that is pretty well done, and it's articulated well and everything. And this one, it felt like it was just a bunch of people who were kind of grouped together in a live stream and were just doing this for the first time, which that's kind of what it seemed like it was. And it was not done well at all, especially in an environment like E3. So my personal thoughts, if they were going to do a Nintendo Treehouse stream or nothing, I would have rather them done nothing and just done their reveals online and, had their demos in person over there. But aside from that, there was the Microsoft conference and the Sony conference. And between those two, I thought both were pretty great. Now, people probably think that, I thought Sony's was miles better. And honestly, I did like Sony's more. I preference that. But both conferences were solid. Microsoft did what they needed to. Yeah, they did usher in, some new hardware there, and they announced that. But for the most part, they just went from game to game to game to game to game and announced a few features here and there. And that's what they needed to do. Although one thing you'll notice is that they did not mention the Kinect at all. Like, if somebody can go back and try and prove me wrong on it, I would love to hear about that. But to my knowledge, at least, no mention of the Kinect. And the biggest revelation from that conference was that it is officially confirmed at this point that Xbox is transitioning over to a brand and a service, and it's not going to be limited to a console anymore. Now, I've done my thoughts on that, and I'm pretty much in support of it. I do believe that this should definitely happen, although I think it is going to be a bit harder to sell Xbox consoles now, but I also feel like that the Xbox consoles still have a place in people's homes for people that just don't want to touch PC at all. But for the most part, I'm now kind of recommending to people, hey, unless you have to have an Xbox One console, like unless you have to have it or you have some type of sentimental value attached to it, if you're looking to buy something and you're kind of wanting to get the most games, PS4 PC is a pretty good combination. That way, you're going to get all the multi-platform games on PC, and you're going to get any type of Xbox One exclusive games on PC as long as you're on Windows 10, And then if you have to have, the console exclusives, well, Sony exclusives are going to be on the PS4, and then anything that's just limited to consoles at that point, which at that point would really be between, the Wii U and PS4, which I doubt we're going to see much of, you have a PS4 available. Now, the reason why I don't really mention the Wii U that much is because I've also kind of come to terms with the fact that, not that it's a dead console or anything, it's just people want a Xbox One or they want a PS4. If you're that type of person, there's no convincing you to get a Wii U. Wii U is a good console. I enjoy the system. I think it's a good system, and I'm disappointed that it's done so poorly, but I'm also aware and cognizant of the fact that the Xbox One and PS4 people are not the type of people generally that would rather have a Wii U at that point. But going on to that, then Sony had an excellent conference, and one thing I want to say as well too, I just kind of have to put this out there, when I'm saying, I'm impressed with these games, this is all opinionated type stuff. I saw a lot of people that were agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, and you can have your own opinions, but also what I saw a lot of was people saying, oh yeah, Sony only had 1 or 2 good games, or all these games look like trash, or Microsoft only had 1 good game, and it's like, well, what a good game is to you is extremely subjective. Like, if you say something like, oh yeah, this game did not look good, or it was laggy, or it didn't perform well, those are facts if you can back them up. If you say this game was not good, that's your opinion, and that's subjective. That's not factual information. So what I'm saying here with these conferences, when I'm talking about the games themselves, are really my own opinion, and even what I think on them too. If I say, this conference is good, this conference is boring, that's still my own opinionated type thing. But going on to that, back with the Sony conference, I almost thought they went 2 balls to the wall with this. But at the same time, if you didn't see it, they had an entire old school, beautiful theater rented out, and then they had a live orchestra playing, and they had a 5-minute introduction for that, and then that orchestra ended up playing all of the music that was shown in the God of War reboot demo. And that God of War demo, I have to say, that is probably the thing I'm most excited about. And some people might say, oh, you're a Sony fan, or you're a PlayStation fan, or you're a God of War fanboy. Actually, I do prefer Sony most of the time. Some people might be shocked with that because you all have known me through the Xbox stuff. And historically, aside from the 7th generation, I've preferred Sony consoles, so that's more or less been my preference. But when it comes down to this, I don't have any type of attachment to God of War. I played a little bit of Chain of Olympus on the PSP. I played a little bit of God of War 1, I think on PS2 and PS3. I played a little bit of God of War 3 on PS4. And it is impressive that a game that I have absolutely no mental attachment to at all, or any type of sentiment in, I am excited for. That was my best in show for E3, honestly. And the funny thing is, because, hey, God of War fans, they are fanatics and they are completely obsessed with it. And I think this was completely for them as well, too, because not only, they were trying to, have a nice showcase and bring it on board as hey, we're kind of rebooting this into a new direction, but I felt like they almost went overkill at one point with the theater and the orchestra, and I was discussing with a friend, and I'm like, you know what? The funny thing is, I think that was actually what they needed to do. I don't feel like they did overkill on that release just because it's such an iconic thing for Sony, and that's definitely one of their babies. This I have right here on screen, not on screen here, but at least on my screen, the notes that I took for the press conference, and this has never happened to me before, and that's why I was waiting for a break, because Sony, they just unloaded completely and went back to back to back to back with fire. And the games in a row was God of War, Days Gone, The Last Guardian, Horizon Zero Dawn, Detroit Become Human, Resident Evil 7, and then PSVR. So PSVR is where they started, tapering off, but up until that point, all of those games that I mentioned, I saw the demos and I said, those are all games that I want. There was not a single game in that original lineup, like the first 30 to 45 minutes of the show, that I said, nah, I'll pass on it. No, every single game there I wanted, which was absolutely crazy. My wallet might break a little bit. And then the PS4, the PSVR, I included in there because, as some people might know, I pre-ordered that, so I'm already planning to get that. But then, they died down a little bit. But aside from that, that first introduction was excellent with what they did, at least in my opinion. Now, as I said, my best in show was really God of War, but technically that's not really an original title, that is a reboot of an already existing franchise. And probably my favorite game that I saw that was an original is We Happy Few, that was at the Microsoft press conference. And I have to say this as well, because a friend and I, we were discussing this as well too. He was telling me he thought it looked amazing, and he thought it looked great, and that was definitely my favorite part of that, as well as Inside. Inside was pretty great as well, too. Just the little bit we saw, it looked deliciously depressing. I want to play the game because I absolutely loved Limbo. But my friend was telling me, I'm so happy I have a PC because that would have been a system seller to me. And if you notice, that was the only game that they had that was an exclusive, that was a timed exclusive. Everything else said Xbox One, Windows 10 exclusive. We Happy Few is going to be an Xbox One timed exclusive, and then it's eventually going to come out to Windows 10. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that was the only game I noticed that was like that. So I've already said my favorite game overall was God of War. My favorite original title that I saw was We Happy Few. But honestly, another game that I just have to mention on here, and you could even say technically God of War is a reboot, this might be my favorite sequel that I've seen and even experienced, was Resident Evil 7, because I was not expecting that at all. I didn't know what take they were going to do with that. When I first saw it, I honestly thought, because, it looks a lot like PT. Not gonna lie, it looked a lot like it. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, well, PT's not happening, because that was Silent Hills, so Allison Road got canceled. Did Allison Road, did the team get bought up, and they canceled Allison Road because they're actually working on, the same type of game with Sony? And then, no, it ended up being Resident Evil 7. And it's quite jarring, because just like God of War, this is a violent change in the main series franchise, but I'm actually okay with it. Now, God of War, I don't have an attachment to. Resident Evil, I have a bit of an attachment to, but I've seen what they've been doing. Resident Evil 1 through 3, I enjoyed. 4 and 5 were cool. 6, I absolutely hated, but a lot of people kind of shame 4 because that started that 4, 5, and 6 roller coaster. So now Resident Evil 7's coming. It's going to be VR capable, but it's going to be in, first person as well. And I've played the demo. I enjoyed it, and it's obvious that they were gunning after that PT crowd because they looked at that. They're like, wow, people really like this. This is some good marketing. So what are we going to do? We're going to make a demo that's in first person, a lot like PT. We're going to drop it mysteriously. All of a sudden, no one's going to expect it. And it worked out pretty well. And even the demo itself, it is quite impressive because just the technical feat of it as well, it looks excellent. It plays at a silky smooth 60 frames a second. And I gotta say, man, Capcom, they know what they're doing on this one. From what I've read, though, the demo isn't really going to be a direct part of the game, but I feel like this is going to be, a good direction for the game itself. It's going to kind of suck to people who want the original type of Resident Evils, but even a lot of Resident Evil veterans that are obsessed with it that I know have said, this is cool, man. I want to play this, and it's legitimately pretty scary as well, too. So overall, man, we got new hardware. We got to see some new peripherals here and there. Well, technically kind of new. We got an announcement, an official announcement and release date and everything for PSVR. We got to see quite a few good games. Nintendo and Sony really pulled their part on there. We saw even cooler demos, from other places as well too. And I've already said, out of the conferences, Sony was my favorite. My favorite game overall, best in show for me, is God of War right now. Favorite original title would have to be We Happy Few, and probably favorite sequel that I've seen is Resident Evil 7. So overall, I thought it was a pretty great show. The only thing that I was actually a little bit surprised with that I didn't see was I was honestly expecting to see some kind of Xbox One streaming device. Now, there was kind of a mock-up or maybe even a leak at one point that there might be a Xbox One stick that would be, a streaming device, kind of like the Steam Link. And I actually think that'd be a pretty interesting idea. And I was quite shocked to see that we're getting 2 new console variants, but there's not going to be a streaming box. So I think especially with this whole Xbox becoming a service thing, even more streaming as well too, and then, Universal Windows platform becoming more of a thing, both on the console and on the PC, the Xbox One stick would be a good idea. That's at least just my opinion. But anyways, let me know what you all thought of this year's E3. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What were your favorite things that you saw?